Good morning and welcome to the Orchid Hut. We are outside today for this video. Thanks for joining me today. The first thing that you can see in the garden as we take a walk to the Orchid Hut is the mountain laurel tree that was in bloom a month or so ago with the really large purple blooms, and now the blooms have turned into seed pods. So as they fall to the ground, it will probably be starting a lot of new little mountain laurel trees. Okay, so it's going to be a little bit wobbly. We're off the tripod as I sort of take a walk here to the Orchid Hut. And what I want to show you today in this video is my Vandas. I'm going to give you a little bit of an update on my Vandas. You know, I'm in southeast Texas, and while, gosh, a good 9 months of the year are really hot and warm and humid, in the winter my Vandas have to come inside because we often get temperatures, you know, that stay in the low 40s, upper 30s with a risk of frost overnight, and so they can't really stay outside. So they spent most of the winter under grow lights in the bathroom, and then if it would be a bright, warm, sunny day, I would bring them and hang them on the edge of the garage door where they could get some natural sun. But over the winter, I do feel like I lose at least a couple of 2-3 months of growing for the Vandas. So, like for example, people in South Florida can grow these outdoors year-round, but I do have to bring mine in and then bring them back out. So I just wanted to give you a quick update. They have definitely started their growth phase, and as I come in closer to each one, I'll see if I can focus in on the name tag. This one is Sanderiana, and I'll see if I can point to the new root growth. So right here, great big new root growing, and then even the older roots from last year have new root tips starting. You can be patient as the camera auto focuses in and out. Let's see, and here's another right down in there. Okay, so as we move down to the next Vanda, and I do grow all of mine in these wooden slat baskets. We'll talk about the media that's in there in just a second, but this one is Coltana green gold crossed with tessellata, and they even put a picture of the bloom on the tag. And this one had a bit of a problem last year, but let me back up even a little bit further than that. I've had these 4 Vanda orchids in baskets now for about a year. One of them is an intergeneric hybrid, and that's the one that I'll show you next, but I've had them for about a year, so they are a bit experimental for me. About 5 or 6 years ago, I had 2 Vandas growing out in the backyard just like these, and I had them for about 6 months and they just died, and I have no idea why. I was not what I would call an experienced grower, and certainly not with Vandas back then, so I really didn't investigate that too much. They just died and they went in the trash, and that was the end of that. So this group of 4 Vandas are, I guess, my next attempt at being successful at growing them. None of them have bloomed yet, but of course I'm not exactly sure that they are large enough to do so yet, but I really am hoping that this growing season helps them get a little bit closer to being blooming size. Okay, so this particular one had like crown rot. I would say maybe about a month after I purchased it last year. And I did something really drastic. I cut 6 leaves off the top of the crown and I treated it, and I was really hoping that it would sprout out a new top and continue to grow. And it did do that. So the top 6 leaves on this Vanda is where it kind of grew back its crown, and you can still see from last year where I had cut the leaf right here. So I had cut it off about right here last year to fix the crown rot, and then it regrew this, and now this new leaf is this year's growth. So it regrew like 4 leaves back last year, and now this year this 5th leaf is coming. So it's almost back to the size that it was when I purchased it. Now, new root growth is looking pretty good. It's putting out 2 new roots right here. And down, let's see, at the bottom, these were roots from last year, but you know, new little root tips branching from older roots. So that's a really good sign that it's doing well. Now, the way that I'm caring for these is I am misting them twice a day. So early in the morning and then again at about 3 or 4 o'clock in the late afternoon. And even when I mist them late in the afternoon like that, they are completely dry again by nightfall. And then once or twice a week, I soak them in a bucket with fertilizer. So depending on how the humidity goes and whether or not we get rain, which we haven't lately, we're actually in a drought, I will soak them once or twice in a bucket with fertilizer, and then the other days they're just misted. Okay, so this is the one that's the intergeneric hybrid. It is a Vanda stylus. And this one, I'm going to take it down off the hanger. This one was in sort of pitiful shape when I purchased it. The root system at the bottom, I left it when I transferred it to this wooden basket, but I don't see any of those roots branching. So I think they are dead, and at some point when I do a little bit of a tidy out here, I'll just go ahead and remove those. So the only roots that it had alive to support it were the few little green branches that you see on top. And now you can see a new root growing for this year. So I'm hopeful that this one will bounce back a little bit. It has lived in somewhat of a state of semi-dehydration because the root system was so poor. And it does have a new little leaf coming from the top. So happy about this one that it looks like it's going to recover. Now, in these baskets, I have kind of a combo, and I can't really say that I've done the same thing each time I put these Vandas in the basket, but I'm really just using chunky pieces, like chunky pieces of cork, chunky pieces of charcoal, chunky pieces of orchid bark, and maybe just the tiniest bit of sphagnum moss to help hold the moisture in there. So I don't know that any of these are done exactly the same from one to the next, but it's just a very thin layer in the bottom, mostly to just have, you know, something that the roots can help stabilize themselves in. And then of course as the roots grow, they actually attach to the wood, and then the plant is really stable in there. So this next one had a really long root system from last year, but there are signs that it's beginning to branch just a little bit, like right there. And then some of these root tips are becoming active, so that's a good sign. A little bit of a branching happening right here. I'm gonna go ahead and take this one down. It attached to the basket last year and kind of had this cascading root system over the side. You can see a new root coming through the slats right there, and inside the pot there was a lot of new root growth. In fact, some of them have gotten so long you can't even really tell they're new roots anymore. There's one right down in there, if you can see it. And let me see, this one is This one is actually kind of interesting. So it's a cross, and one parent had pink blooms and one parent had purple blooms. And so when I purchased this, it was advertised as, well, we're not sure what you're going to get. It might be pink, it might be purple, or it might even be a blue. So, you know, of course, everybody is probably hoping for the blue, but until it blooms, I won't really know what I have. I won't know which of the parents' genetics were passed down to this one. Okay, so that's an update on my 4 sort of semi-experimental Vanda orchids. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and the subscribe button is coming up in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Thanks so much for watching, and happy orchid growing. Talk to you next time.